The work on stress was done in Canada by a Canadian Hungarian physician, Hans János Selye, and he showed in the laboratory that when you stress animals, it depletes their immune system and ulcerates their guts and all kinds of other effects. So stress is when the body's under threat or under pressure that it can't handle, and that has physiological effects. And so stress hormones are released. If I were to threaten you right now, you would have stress hormone released from your adrenal glands on top of your kidneys, adrenaline and cortisol. That would help you fight. Adrenaline makes you faster and stronger and more endurance. Cortisol gives you sugar so that you can have more energy, which is necessary for the flight or fight response. In the short term, they save your life. In the long term, when you're chronically stressed because of whatever's going on, those same hormones, the adrenaline elevates your blood pressure, narrows your blood vessels, increases clotting factors, you're more at risk for heart disease or strokes. Cortisol thins your bones, osteoporosis, ulcerates your intestines, puts fat on your belly in a way that promotes heart disease, suppresses the immune system, and causes depression, amongst many other effects. So chronic stress is a source of pathology. Where trauma comes in is that when people are traumatized early in life, they develop patterns of behaving that bring stress into their lives. Like those 4 characteristics, they cause a lot of stress. That stress has all kinds of physiological effects. There's an interesting but completely false idea that our ancestors out in nature were more stressed than we are because of saber-toothed tigers. Total nonsense. When you study indigenous societies, they're far less stressed than we are because they're at one with nature, they understand their environment, so they're not always faced with the unknown. Number one, they have a much lower sense of control, and there's much more communal. And actually, they spend more time playing and relaxing than we do. This is what happens when you study small indigenous groups. So the factors in our society that create stress are, this has been studied, uncertainty, lack of information, loss of control, and conflict. Now these are the conditions of a lot of people in this society. There's an uncertainty because who makes the decisions? Most of the decisions that affect people's lives in a big way, like where factories are going to open or close, where jobs are going to be available or not, what's going to happen to the environment, conflict, of which there's a lot, both on a personal and interpersonal and on the social level, especially these days. It's just getting more and more dire and more harsh. The social discourse is getting more and more threatening to more people. Less of a sense of community, much higher rates of loneliness than there used to exist. I mean, in Britain they had to appoint a minister for loneliness. Now loneliness can be as much a risk factor for health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Communal Aboriginal societies, there was no loneliness, you know. So the terrible uncertainty. Children, how we evolved as human beings is children spent the whole day with their parents until they were adults. Now, from early age on, most kids don't see their parents most of the day. And that may be how it is, that may be how it has to be for the economy to function, but then we should understand what we've lost and teach people how to compensate for it, but we don't. So completely unnatural situation that kids should be away from their parents the whole day. It's just taken for granted. And we're not aware of the emotional, relational dynamics that have been lost. You know, in the United States, 25% of women have to go back to work within 2 weeks of giving birth, which is a major abandonment of a quarter of American kids, because that's the only way the kid can experience it. And also, when parents don't spend time on their kids, they lose their parenting instincts. We have parenting instincts, but they have to be evoked by a child who's near you and looking to you. So we lose our parenting instincts. So kids are stressed. And by the way, if you want to know how stressed a marriage is, there's two ways you can find out. You can ask the parents, you can interview them, or you can measure their kids' stress hormone levels. These are the things that are so important, but I barely even talk about them because I talk about the things that are less obvious. But the food that kids eat, what that does to the microbiome in the gut, which itself is an important dynamic in maintaining a healthy body. As far as we're finding out, the cell phones, the digital media, studies have now shown that the more time kids spend on screens, the more it interferes with healthy brain development. And as a parent, almost you have to defend your kids against the culture rather than embrace the culture. You have to say, no, I got to keep this out of my house. I have to protect my kids from it. Parents are supposed to be in an alpha role. Alpha means we're in charge. But parenting is not a democracy. A 2-year-old doesn't get to vote on whether to crawl out into the winter snow without any clothes on. There's no democratic debate here. So we have to be alpha people in our kids' lives. Technology, kids are getting smarter on technology than their parents are. We've lost our alpha position. You don't think that undermines the relationship? Sure it does. It was shown in a Harvard study 3 or 4 years ago now, that women with severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, have double the risk of ovarian cancer. And the milder the symptoms are, the less the risk. It's been shown that children whose parents are stressed are much more likely to have asthma. And the greater the emotional distress of the parents, the more medication that child may have to take for the asthma. What are we talking about here? We're talking about here the inseparability of emotions and physiology. Why are they inseparable? Because that's how nature created us. So that a one-celled organism has the capacity or the ability to move towards what's nourishing and to move away from what's threatening, to take in nutriments, to eliminate, to digest, to reproduce. A one-celled organism. In other words, it can do everything we can do, in that sense. Now, the fact that we have 37 trillion cells doesn't mean that that fundamental unity has ever disappeared. So the nervous system, the immune apparatus, the hormonal system, the emotional system are one system. This isn't insight or New Age wisdom, this is modern science. It's not even vaguely controversial. Which means when things happen emotionally, naturally they happen physiologically.